Mm. Good evening. Welcome to They Say. My name is Allison McFarlane, founder and CEO of Allison McFarlane Inc. And I am honored to have you guys here tonight with us to check out another dynamic episode. And this one is called The Knowledge of Wealth. And I'm so honored to have this rock star in amongst us. You don't always get to sit with legends and just iconic figures. So I'm honored to have this iconic figure and legend on They Say. I've had the pleasure of knowing Sammy for a little while. We got to do a really cool leadership thing together, so I've gotten to get to know him even better. But when I say this man is like an icon, a wealth of knowledge, I am grateful to be able to call him a colleague and a friend. And Sammy, I can't hype you up any longer. Like, tell the people about yourself. Like, I could go into your bio, but I would probably need like 2 hours. So I'll let you do the cliff notes, and then we'll get to the conversation.
Well, first of all, Allison, thank you for having me. And you always do a fantastic job with these podcasts. I love watching them. So it's an honor to be on one. With you. Uh, Briefly about me, I think I'll keep it Cliff Notes. I started with my cybersecurity, passion in cybersecurity. Started a cybersecurity consulting firm that deals with a lot of white collar and cyber crimes, especially within the arena of human trafficking, that I'm really passionate about. And then from that led on to me starting a digital marketing firm down the road. I've been doing both of those things for 13 plus years, at this point. And apart from that, my civic duty of kind of giving back to the community. I've done various roles within the community. Currently serving as the planning commissioner with City of Houston in the planning and the development department.
You're too modest. The way you said that is like everybody could do that role.
Well,
Let's.
I believe if you put your heart, passion, and ambition to it, you
Mhm.
can become whoever you want to in today's world.
I love it. So let's dig into that heart passion. And then aren't you, didn't you go to University of Houston too? I know you guys have a huge, like super duper alumni.
Yes, yes. U of H is a phenomenal school, and I didn't go to the business school. I went to the College of Technology. That's kind of merged in with College of Engineering now, but uh, you know, the business school is one of the top in nation, and engineering program is one of the finest out there.
Yeah, it really is. And your alumni network is insane. Like the way people promote and just support from University of Houston, it's like nothing I've ever seen before. So kudos to your school and just kudos to you. So I do want to thank you because you could have done anything on a Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, and you chose to sit with me on They Say. So we thank you because I truly feel like you are a wealth of knowledge. I have had the pleasure of having some very good conversations with you. You always put me in that place where I'm like digging deeper into who Allison is and what I'm trying to achieve. There's no surface conversations here with Sammy. So I'm excited he said yes. And Sammy, kind of help us understand your journey. You have such a unique journey that I feel like we need to just start there. Like, who is Sammy and what is Sammy's journey? That's my question.
I think I don't have a path. I always talk about this. I'm a firm believer in God and have had a very strong faith in, and I've always depended on that faith. So when I really say I don't know how I got where I am today, I really don't. It's been, I think, prayers of my parents, my prayers, to God to lead the way. But I had started out in high school, in aerospace, and that aerospace passion kind of pulled me towards technology. At that stage when I was in high school, they were at the peak of what they were doing with space programs. I'd gone over to NASA, did my internship. From there, I kind of started getting tugged towards two of my passions. One was cybersecurity, which was coming up. One was aerospace engineering. So I started leading towards, cybersecurity. Started that firm, and Houston, unfortunately, is known as number one when it comes to human trafficking. And I said, let me put my passion of cybersecurity towards fighting those virtual crimes. And I started doing that as a private consultant to a lot of the federal agencies. Uh, and from there, Eventually, digital marketing was on the rise, and I decided to kind of dabble into it. That entrepreneurship bug never stops. You want to do what you want to do, and then you want to hop onto the next thing.
Yeah.
So I hop onto that bandwagon and kept continuing with both of those things. My big passion and journey that I'm kind of fighting for, I think Allison, you and I have spoken about this,
Yes.
is I want to get to a point where I wake up and I give back to the community. That's what I'm trying to set up here, is get myself set up in place where I can feed myself and make sure that I can feed those that need it.
I think that's awesome. And I think that truly speaks to your heart and who you are in the community. So I'm honored that you want to wake up one day and just be able to give back. I feel like you do give back a lot now, but I understand wanting to do that 100%. I too would like, ultimate goal is to be a full-time philanthropist. So we're working towards that. But yes, I definitely feel like if you don't have a heart for the community, the community is the lifeline of everything. So if you don't have a heart for the community or understand the importance of the community, then you're really missing the lifeline of how to achieve real success. Would you agree?
Yeah, and you're very true. You got to build a community around you, and but the thing is, people don't realize when it comes to giving back, you can get burnt easily.
Yep.
And I still remember words of a friend named Sunny Sharma, and he said, if you can't feed yourself, you can't feed others. So you need to make sure that you can actually take care of yourself and your family uh, before you can help others. And I've had the situation where I've spent more time volunteering than focusing on my company, and you can see the results. You start going downwards. Now you flip the situation, and I started focusing more on my passion and ambition. I was able to give back more. And so I call giving back a drug. It's a whole different form of drug, and that feel good
Yeah.
to help others.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we need to take a step back and really think how we're going to do this.
So let's talk about this, Sammy, because that's a great point that you bring up. And I think often in this entrepreneur space, we think that volunteering and continuing to volunteer and continue to volunteer some more will help us with our visibility, help us with our networking. But how do you balance having to give back, right? And then needing to get clients, but then also maintaining your visibility? What would you recommend there, since you've been doing
Networking. That's a key. It's honestly about just true feeling of helping others. I always say, if you chase money, you're never going to catch it. If you chase success, money's going to follow you. And so if you really put your passion and heart to it, it's going to come.
Yeah.
And networking is the key. It's how do you connect people. I've never thought of networking as a way of making money. I've always seen networking as a way of making connections, connecting people with each other, and doing that. In my early days of starting the business, that's all I had. It was volunteering, connecting with people, and guess what? When you're volunteering, you never know who's next to you. I joke about this. I was it was actually at Hobby Airport. We were in early days of my college. We were all volunteering, all the college students, and there was this guy helping with the cleanup, cutting grass,
Yeah.
and there was another gentleman that was actually helping clean the trees up in this neighborhood. And next thing I know, there's a bunch of cameras running towards them. They take their mask off, they fix themselves up. One was a regional FAA director. One was a billionaire out of New York that was just volunteering. You never know who you're standing next to and who's kind of giving back, and who you're going to connect with on this journey. So giving back does, come back tenfold.
Yes.
Yes. And that's something that you just have to know and believe. And I've God has always said that if you give $1, you get, I'm going to speak in dollar cents. Obviously, you didn't say it in dollar cents, but you give, one time, you get tenfolds back.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. When you take care of others, He takes care of you through that journey.
So I'm a huge proponent of reaping and sowing. I tell people oftentimes, what you reap, you sow. What you put out, you get back, which either good or bad. So you got to be careful what you're putting out. And I think we often forget that, you can also sow bad things. So you want to be cognizant of what you're putting out there, because business can be very cutthroat. And I don't think people understand that you don't always have to be so cutthroat. You got to stay true to who you are. So how have you maintained your character after 13 plus years, and you've done a lot of pivots. So how have you been able to maintain your character through that?
I think you have to remind yourself, I'm not going to say my journey was perfect, right? There were times where I felt like uh, the kindness was backfiring,
Yeah.
at me, and you have to take a step back and you have to reevaluate. Uh, that does not, entrepreneurship does not mean you have to be cutthroat. You need to step on people to get to the next level. I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make in the early stages where they drop the kindness and start going towards just building a name and building it. I think you need to dig into your soul and keep that passion alive.
Yes.
uh, and that's one big thing we're seeing with entrepreneurship stress. You have a lot of people who think kindness is weakness when it's not. And you have to constantly remind yourself. I've fallen for that before, where I thought that I was never going to make it as an entrepreneur because I'm not cutthroat. But it's not true. There is plenty of fish, out there for everybody. Uh, and
Oh,
and I switched my passion in entrepreneurship from competing to collaborating, and
yeah.
that's what I've done. In the past decade, I've done nothing but collaborate and build my business.
Well, I think that's great, Sammy, and I definitely think that speaks to your reputation. So before I actually knew who you were, I often tell people your reputation goes before you. So be careful and make sure you have a good name. So Sammy's name is a name that I have heard prior to meeting him.
As a
So
troublemaker.
that's not true. So I will not have a troublemaker on They Say. Let's be very clear. um, but yeah, so his reputation goes before him, and it's one of good character, and people speak well of him. So I don't believe he pays these people. And one thing I do personally when it comes to vetting people or just kind of seeing who aligns with what I have going on and just being careful about who I lend my name to is I'll ask in the community, I'll ask different people that I know that are pretty plugged in well, hey, tell me about this person. What do you think about them? What's your interactions been? And how have they delivered? And so you just got to be very cognizant of what you're putting out because the world is smaller than you realize. I've been telling my daughter that, and she's finally seeing it this week of school. And she's like, oh my God, mom, there's so many people that know this person, know this person. I was like, yes. So be careful what you say and be careful how you act because everything comes full circle. So how have you been able to maintain the fact that everything does come full circle, but you've still been able to pivot and kind of go forth? So what has been your driving force?
You talk about going full circle, not directly relevant. It's very interesting. I remember, not to take any names, when I had applied for a cyber and a digital marketing internship with a group. They had turned it down, and they had turned it down because I was too young. A B, it turned up being I was not the right shade they were looking for. All right, a very interesting, way of saying it. But uh, talk about 7 years later, that same person, forgot and was applying at our company for a position. And so when you talk about the world runs in circle, it truly does.
Yes.
And and karma is something that never stops. What you said earlier, what you sow now you're going to reap later. It happens, and you see that in front of you. It's a time game. It's going to happen in 1 year. It's going to happen immediately. It's going to happen 10 years down the road.
Right.
And so it's truly something that we need to look at when we're kind of giving back. But small world is uh, something I'm starting to get freaked out about lately, because you'll meet somebody across the world, and next thing you know, they happen to have a relative or a friend, or they end up in Houston.
Yep. Nope.
So this world is truly extremely small. You never know who knows who.
Right.
And what you said is very, very well. I was on a recent trip to Middle East, and I met this gentleman. It took me almost 4, 5, 6 months of uh, trying to get a meeting with him. It turns out it was my best friend's cousin this whole time, that I never knew about. So
Oh,
he calls me and goes, "Hey, how do you know this gentleman?" I said, "Well, it's been about 6 months making this meeting happen." And he's like, "Well, that's my aunt's son." And so again, you don't ask the question, you're never going to find out. You never know who knows who. Uh,
True.
so that it's truly a circle journey, and building that network up, expanding on it, connecting with people is the only way to go. Nowadays, it's who you know, and it's used to be who you know. It's almost becoming who knows you,
You.
and as Allison know that very well in branding. uh, that's the key. It's to kind of elevate you to the level where people start knowing you,
Yep.
and not about you reaching out to people to know you.
That is so
So
true.
this little device, has changed the game.
Sammy, when you can network from your phone, there's no excuse to not go to a networking event. One of my mentors, I don't know if she's on, but Queenie, she told me, she's like, Allison, there's so many LinkedIn lives, there's so many different Zoom events. She's like, there's no excuse to not be networking. And if you don't necessarily want to go outside the house all the time, or you don't want to see the same people, try a different way. But they're, like he said, our phones have taken us to a whole nother level of how to connect and how to interact. Like, you really don't have to leave your house. I encourage you to leave your house sometimes, but it's not a necessity anymore.
You said it very well. I mean, it, think of it this way: the phone plus internet, you can run $1 billion business. All right. I mean, it's never been this easy. At the same time, being an entrepreneur, if you have the right product, right connections, right people on your phone, and it's connected to the internet, you can make $1 billion. Forget billion. We'll talk small scale for uh, mompreneurs, especially in Houston.
Yeah.
Where they are making several hundred thousand.
Right.
And people don't realize that to be in top 1% of moneymakers, you need to make roughly 400 to $700,000, and that's enough to put you in the top 1% of earners. Out there, all through your phone and internet.
And that's crazy. And I think that's a great example that you said. So I know people are going to want to know, well, Sammy, what do we do to make $1 billion through our phone? So Sammy, what do we do? How do you know for sure we can make $1 billion through our phone? But I get what you're saying.
Networking.
Yes.
And branding.
Yeah.
Don't discount branding.
No. Okay. So let's go into that, because that is the area. So Sammy does have a whole marketing firm too, and he's the master networker. That's why I knew about him before I even met him. So let's go into that. Tell us more about the importance of branding and kind of marketing, and how you've seen it kind of grow since you've been in it for much longer. You said like 13 years.
In digital age, you are. It's rare that you walk up to somebody and be like, "Oh, hey, Allison, I'm Sammy. Nice to meet you." A lot of times nowadays, when you walk into a networking event and you put your hand out, that person goes, "Oh, hey, you're Sammy," or "Hey, you're Allison." They have done their research to know who's coming, who's going to be there, and people study you, and people watch you, and people keep up with you. That's why I always, I joke about the fact that you can run $1 billion business off your cell phone, but you can. You can. Uh, you have TikTokers that are getting brought into corporate, Fortune 100 companies to explain to the board how TikTok can help their Fortune 100 firm with, 80, 90,000 employees. Federal government is bringing in TikTokers because the TikTokers have been able to explain some of the laws, especially like the transportation department. They have been able to explain the laws in a layman term. So your phone truly has kind of become a place for you to build an image and people to get to know you before they might even know you in real life. Look at political arena. You are as somebody who's an elected official running, you might never meet 100% of all your constituents. You might only meet if let's say your race has 200,000 votes, you might only meet 500 people in real life.
Right.
The other 195,000 people are probably just going to be seeing you online and learn about your brand from what others say about you. And so it's become very important that we kind of keep that image going online, keep building that image, and having something positive about ourselves. Internet's a rare place. It's a place where you can make it and break it. You can build your image, but people make opinions about you without ever meeting you.
Ooh, so let's talk about that. let's hang our hat there for a second.
Huh?
So people making opinions about you for before they even meet you. So
Yeah.
I like to say, and I was honored to be able to go to one of the local community colleges here and speak to a freshman class about the importance of your personal brand and just how to protect that, because corporations look at that. Um, People that want to do business, your clients are going to look at what you're putting out. Friends look at that. Like I I'm very conscious about my digital footprint and what it looks like and what I'm putting out there, because I don't want to do anything that will jeopardize what I believe, what my brand is. So just staying true to the brand of Allison McFarland and the brand of my company, right? If I say I'm integral, integrity really matters to me, accountability, and just making those really building relationships matters to me. So if I say that and you don't see me displaying those things, how integral or how good am I building relationships if I'm not displaying that as you see me? So I think your digital footprint and how you, like I always say, you're known before people actually know you. Just like Sammy said, Google is my best friend and we be finding all kinds of stuff out. But you want to make sure you manage your reputation, even as an employee of a firm, or even as somebody that is not an entrepreneur. You want to manage your reputation because you don't know where you'll end up.
You 100% nailed it, when you said that, because uh, people don't realize your value gets accentuated to such a level that companies think 10 times before they're going to lay you off.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, well, this person, is not just an employee, is a valuable employee with this image. At the same time, and I don't know if you remember this from early days, Allison, when they used to say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And
Yes.
then the saying became what happens in Vegas stays on Snapchat, TikTok,
Yeah.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Um, and that's the reality. There's so many cases that I get of young professionals, students who are trying to eliminate their past because they thought something was funny, and now it's coming a decade later and biting them in the butt,
Right.
when they're really trying to build themselves up or do something. It's an unforgivable place to be online. So it's and another point is, before people make those opinions about you, you help create the opinions. Be out there and make that image of yourself, and let them develop opinions about it. By what you're telling the world,
Yep.
not by what somebody else is saying about you.
That is so true. That is so true. So that's why I always encourage people to get ahead of it. Like I know oh, I'm just a mom and I'm just a student. You are a person that has the potential to become something great. So get ahead of your managing your reputation, because you never know what will happen. So yes, that is a place that I absolutely love and deal in. So you said something that I want to touch back on, was just the cyberspace. I know you're huge in that cybersecurity space, and I think we don't, like, I've had the conversations. I know me and you've had intimate conversations about the high schoolers and just different things that you've experienced, that I came home and I had a whole conversation with my daughter and I was like, do we need to block this? Like, who are you talking to? Um, just so that she's safe, because I don't think kids often know what is out there. Like they think they have an ideal, but I don't really think they understand what's out there and who's out there. So if you wouldn't mind touching on some of the stuff that you've kind of shared with me, that would be
You
helpful.
know, we're truly parenting in digital age, nowadays, and for parents to say, well, the learning curve is too high is no longer an excuse. It's their job to keep up with the technology when you have a child at home, and you're not going to ask a high schooler 16 years into your relationship with them as a parent to take their phone and say, give me your password. It's a relationship that's really built on communication and trust. So I
Right.
always say, start extremely young, and build that relationship and trust up so they feel comfortable when they're in a situation to come speak with you. Um, and that is a big issue. Unfortunately, we deal with in minority communities where the kids are so afraid of coming to their parents. Then the parents are so afraid to go to take any sort of legal action or call in law enforcement to help, when there's plenty of free resources just sitting out there. I think Allison, you and I were in a academy class where we learned that how many free resources are there for parents.
Yeah.
uh, just on a phone number. You dial a phone number, and those resources are available to you as a person that lives in this country,
Right.
and and so a communication, building that trust, and then b, if getting the kids to realistically understand that if something happens, it's hard to recover from it.
Yes.
It actually truly becomes a trauma. uh, you don't know who's your friend. I always say, if your kids are friends with somebody, make sure they're real friends.
Yeah.
They're real people. They're not chatting with the AI. They're not chatting with a bot that looks like a smart, handsome guy or a pretty girl online that you're chatting with. Um, and then there's a lot of groomers online. They'll
Yes.
slowly groom your kids over a period of time.
Yes.
And unfortunately, grooming is a patience game.
Yep.
Saying, hey, well, your mom Allison's too strict, and then eventually a week later, it's, well, how come she doesn't let you hang out with XYZ? And then they slowly build that trust up and pull them away from you. So it's also looking at the signs when you're seeing this happen, and knowing that you need to step in and do something. And then finding help from them when they're young. You're
Yes.
not going to drag a 22-year-old kid, into a therapist's office or office somewhere at a doctor's office to get help.
Right.
That is not going to happen. You have to build that relationship up for that piece to happen. So, again, knowing who their friends are is a big key. Who they're chatting with, who they're engaging with, and believing when somebody walks to you and says, "Hey, I believe your child might be, using a certain language against my kid online," because it does happen in the game realm where kids entice each other, and once they're kind of inside it, they'll say things, in the heat of the
They don't
moment.
really mean, yeah, that they don't really mean, but they don't understand the
They
consequence.
don't understand it, and so being able to believe that and having a conversation with your kid, an honest conversation with them, is important, and getting them to know that, and you as a parent nowadays have to know that it's not just your child getting in trouble. And a lot of issues, you will, as a parent, will get in trouble for their actions. Every action has a consequence, and nowadays this is a very sensitive issue. In the gaming world, in the world of digital, their minds. As much as I'm a major advocate that you should let your kids have social media, but at the same time, you have to be aware, of all the things that can go wrong.
And that is so true, Sammy. And I know I'm not gonna make us hang too there too long, but I wanted you to get that out because when he
Yeah,
said some of the, like when we went to lunch and he was telling me this, I was like, oh my gosh. So I like was ready to take the phone, but I had to calm down because
yeah.
tomorrow gonna happen.
I deal with some extreme cases, and these cases, we know of a case very recently where this young lady, well, not a young lady at this point, but it's been 25 years into her career, and the decisions she made in the early days of internet and social media are still kind of chasing her down, and now it's getting to a point where her kids, after this point, are getting harassed with it. And so things happen, but I think early education, and early education, early teachings can stop it.
Yes, and managing your brand. So back to that marketing piece, the importance of managing your brand, guys. Never take that for granted. What you put out there and what people are seeing, and just being like I told the kids at the college I got to go visit. Just being cognizant of how you're perceived online. Thinking bigger. Like I often think we don't think big picture. We think of the instant now, and we are in that now generation. But understanding that now is now, but there's a lot more life to live outside of now. So being just kind of keeping that big picture of, okay, what are we trying to achieve and what am I trying to get to, that could really propel me to have an even greater future. So how have you been able, like you're like super focused. You're like one of my favorite people when it comes to focus. It's like a hyper focus. I need to come and sit with you one day and talk about that. How have you been able to manage your focus, Sammy, on so many? Because you wear so many hats. Like we didn't even scratch the surface. And as I continue to talk to you, we'll get more into it. But we didn't even scratch the surface on how many hats you wear. So how have you been able to manage your hyper focus on and then divide it? Because people are like, there's really no balance. So tell us how you do it because you do it well.
I think the balance of everything I do is sitting on top of a pinhead. You move that needle, it'll drop, but it's very, very tightly, balanced. It was early days of Gary Vaynerchuk when he was becoming an early big sensation in the social media world. We were at South by Southwest. He was doing his book launch, and he had said something, that kind of stuck with me. And his comment was that when you want to get something, double down on it. Put your head down and don't get up till you accomplish it.
Yeah.
And that's very, very true today. With all these distractions of social media, we feel like we need to have everything now. We forget. I think the world, in my opinion, especially my circle around me, I think has forgotten the words 5 years, 10 years down the road.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to have this live 5 years down the road. I want to have this live 10 years down the road. I think manifesting is a huge deal. Closing your eyes and just envisioning where
Yeah.
you need to be,
Yeah.
and then doubling down on what you need to do to get there.
And
That keeps you focused. That's kept me focused. I know that keeps my entrepreneur friends very, very focused. But there's millions of distractions today, and you have to fight it off. You
yeah.
have to fight. You have to fight the latest club. You have to fight the latest restaurant. You have to fight the latest, city to go visit. Um, and there's so much that's happening around us, and you have to fight the feeling that it's all getting away from you. That
Right.
was somewhere that I used to get stuck in when I was trying to do so many different things. I felt like, and I'm not going to lie, I used to achieve a lot, but then at the same time, I think Allison, you and I spoke about this. Then I also used to feel like I've not done enough.
Right.
Uh, but that's because we just have to fight the feeling that you don't need to have everything now, and you slow down and focus one at a time, and you'll accomplish a lot. We constantly keep looking at how far we have left to go, but we don't look at how far we've come. Uh, there was a quote, I think, last week that I was reading, and it said, if you actually stop at this moment, close your eyes, and look at your life, you're exactly where you used to pray you wanted to be,
Mm.
uh, years ago. And that's a reality. When we kind of sit and look back, we realize we've come far. And truly, some of the things we have now, some of the things we're doing now in life is what we used to pray for,
Yeah.
what you used to want, what you used to be envious and jealous about that others had. And
Yeah.
when you now have it, you're chasing that next big star.
Yeah.
Uh, so it doesn't hurt slowing down. I think COVID, unfortunately, as big of a global plague and issue that was, it did show you what happens when the world slows down. You
Yes.
start you
Yes.
kind of start appreciating the little things
Yeah.
in life, and the empire is not built overnight. It's one stepping stone at a time. Um, so that's where I think that I've been really good. It took me a lot of falling on my face, getting back up the next day, falling on my face, getting back up the next day, to figure life out. I don't say I've figured it out. I've always lived like I'm still learning. I'm
That's
learning
good.
for that next one person. And even if I can learn one thing from you, Allison, and one thing from the next person, it's doing nothing but making me one step closer to my goal.
Yep.
Uh, and that feeling of the one step at a time truly helps you see, how far you're going to go and how far you have come.
That's so true. And I think that's oftentimes, even I kind of suffer from that because I tend to move so fast that I forget to, don't shake your head, that I
I'm
forget.
talking about myself.
Okay, good. I was like, no, Sammy, you're shake your head. Even I forget to stop and smell the roses because it's like I'll accomplish something and then I'm off to the next thing. I don't even sit or bask or even be thankful. Like I say, thank you, God, and I move on to the next thing. But I don't think about, okay, how long did it take you to get this thing done, Allison? Like, how long have you been working on this and you finally achieved it? And I'm so driven. Like I tell people, sometimes I'm so driven, I can drive myself crazy. And like, just because I'm so driven. So just balancing my drivenness to kind of slow myself down to not burn out and then not my like I think me and you talked about this on the phone too, just having such a high standard for yourself and being like, that's not it, we got to go do it again. So having that standard and giving yourself that grace. So I think that's the place I'm landing in right now just kind of navigating the grace I'm giving myself to kind of be human, and then giving myself the grace to just be like, okay, you can be driven, but balance it out. So how has that been for you?
I think it's been good. I mean, it's given me time to reflect. It's given me time to, uh, you know, uh, look back and really see what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Slowing down is not a bad thing. The question I ask myself is, so what? I'm not going to get it in 6 months. I'm going to get it in 8 months,
Yeah.
right? Like, does it really flip my world upside down? If I'm not going to hit that, obviously you work extremely hard to hit all your goals.
Right.
Uh, some you hit sooner, and some you're going to hit a little later, and that's okay. That is okay. Branding. We talk about, if I kind of tie all of this in together
Okay.
with building entrepreneurship, building your brand. Branding is a patience game. It's not going to happen overnight. You take one step at a time. Slow down.
Mm.
You're not going to become the next Tom Cruise. And if you look at the journey of, not to bring any of the Hollywood actors in, but if you look at the journey of any of the greats out there, it did not happen overnight.
Right.
You look at Sam Walton starting Walmart. Uh, you look at all these authors. For example, the journey of how Harry Potter was written, the journey of how Microsoft was built. All of these companies, all of these great things that you see out there are a game of patience, and
Mm-hmm.
it takes time. Uh, you know, you're taking a rough stone and chiseling it piece by piece. God doesn't just drop a hammer and chisel you in shape. He carves you slowly through your life to your greatness, and that's what you need to look at. You have to reflect. You have to reflect constantly how this is happening. I saw, if Alice and I told you this the other day, if you look at the first video you ever did and look at now,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna feel like you have come a day and night difference.
Yep.
But when you were starting, that's not how you felt.
No.
What you felt was it needs to be perfect, it needs to be everything.
Yep.
And then now when you look at it, you get to look back and laugh at some of the pieces of life. And that's where, as entrepreneurs, we kind of get stuck in. We
Yeah.
want to have a brand, but we want to have it now. We want to network, but we want to be the most well-known person at the first networking event. Uh, and that's not, you never know what clicks. You never know who's in the room. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know who sees that brand and they say, hey, well, I'm going to work with Sammy, or I'm going to work with Allison only after watching this. You never know who's watching.
That's so true, Sammy. So true. And I love this comment. There's been some really great comments, but I want to stop and look at this one. Ms. Mitchell said exactly. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So-called overnight success end up burning out because they can't keep up with the high pace. You have never lied. So I have always been, prior to starting my own company, I've always been in very commission, sales driven, like sales driven roles. And one thing with sales, it's a cycle. You're always starting over. You're always starting over. But I found that that was kind of trickling into my actual everyday life. And I was thinking that I'm always starting over, always starting over. But I wasn't understanding the importance of slowing down and cultivating those relationships, because I was always so driven to just get to the next thing. So you just got to be careful and balance it all. And it's a balancing act. I have not arrived. I have not arrived, and I am working on it daily. And that is definitely something that can probably get on a lot of people's nerves about me, because I am extremely driven, and I have to pace myself, because I can just be like, we're gone. Let's go.
But here's a good thing. You're doing it the right way. You're looking at your own journey. You're looking at your own pace, and you're not staring at the next person next to you. You're not staring at the prospective competitor or the next achiever that you look up to. It's your own journey. It's your own story that you're writing and living.
Yes.
Um, and we kind of start watching others. That I feel like, in my opinion, that's a very dangerous journey when you're looking at somebody else and saying, that's what I want to be
Right.
now.
Right.
You start losing your own path to that journey. It's in early days, sure, it was an extreme balancing act. How crazy have I networked? I've done 9,500 events a year that I've attended. I've attended 13 events in a day. Uh, but there is a time for everything, and it works. Now I'm at a stage where I'm kind of juggling, 10, 15 major, positions and assignments at a time. But I'm at a stage where I have a team, that's behind and that's kind of helping me make that balance happen. Uh, and that's eventually where you get to the right team, and people. All I say is, bring on people who are much smarter than you.
Yep.
You know, for so I know for a fact that people that are making this balance happen for me are much more smarter than me. And once I kind of learned that key, that I think changed the game.
So let's kind of go into this because I think this is huge and I'm so proud of you and I hate that I missed your swearing in. But when you became commissioner, the planning commissioner, so that's huge, Sammy. Like I want to know more about that and then what it took. And I definitely think it's your personal brand and how you are so committed to Houston and not just Houston, even the stuff I see you do back at home and backstand, like you've done some really amazing things. So how has that journey kind of helped you get to this place of being the planning commissioner?
Yeah, again, dedication and giving back to the community.
Right.
Right. I had earlier in 2023, I had gotten a letter from White House, and it was President Biden sending an award for meeting over 10,500 volunteer hours of work towards human trafficking. Funnily, I never calculated it my whole life until that moment. And to think about that, I had given 10,000 hours of my life to a particular mission, uh, makes you reflect on what you have kind of achieved. I've always been the one that I always say the best way as an entrepreneur is to play an underdog game,
Yep.
and let everybody else think that you're, still haven't arrived, even though you've crossed them. And that's the best way I've done things in life. I've always been that underdog that's trying to make it happen. Um, but civic duty is something I've always been big on. Giving back to the local colleges, giving back to the local community. Um, Hence, the mayor and the city council had kind of came together and appointed me for that position
Mhm.
in the planning department. And it's just one, I think, a piece of my journey. I'm gonna have, uh, many more steps to take. I'm really excited about the role.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Currently, I have a lot more stuff lined up for 2024, but that's all it is. It's a piece in a big cogwheel. I have end goal, and I think that giving my time back as a planning commissioner is helping me towards that end goal of giving back to the people in this community.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I love that you are so humble. And one thing I love about Sammy, he is so like mild mannered and just so like this is it. Like I love that about him. Like he's not and he has his own day here in the city, you guys. It's July 1st. And this dude is so mellow about it. Like it's not even a big deal. And I think that's why you can be trusted with elevation because it doesn't define who you are. It just it adds on to what you're already doing and you're already grounded in who you are. So I think that is so important because a lot of people get these titles, these roles, these accolades, and they are off in the clouds and you got to go in the clouds to get them. And you're not even fortunate enough to be able to touch the cloud that they're on. So I commend you for staying humble and just being somebody that people can like reach out to and you're like tangible. So that's why they say it's so important to me because I know so many amazing people that we probably wouldn't know that are doing great things, but they're tangible. They're not some mystical figures that you can't touch and have conversations with and aren't willing to share their journey. And I think that's what makes you even more powerful is because you don't mind sharing those knowledge and your wisdom. That's why I called this episode The Knowledge of Wealth.
Yeah, but this amount of as an entrepreneur, when you're doing a lot of stuff, an extreme amount of stuff, it can break you, right? It
Yes.
can break you, and so it requires a lot of faith and a lot of believing that there's a higher power that's kind of watching for you and is there for you. And you just have to. I'll tell you, there are moments in my business time where I don't know if I was going to make it, if the
Mhm.
company was going to make it, if the business was going to continue, if the last check I wrote to the charity was going to clear. There is trying times out there, but then you start realizing that somebody else is actually turning the wheel of life, and if you have that faith, that can take you far. And I don't pick and choose on, or I don't push people on what they believe in, but always believe that there's somebody there that's kind of pushing you
Mm,
to make things happen.
wow. I
And so if
believe
you yeah, and then if you truly ask me to write down step by step, how I got there, here from day one, probably can't. There's I look back at some pieces and I go, I don't know how that jump happened. And why did that call come in? Why did that check come in? Uh, you just never know when you need it.
but I appreciate your honesty on that because some people
Yeah.
aren't even willing to just share that little bit of a piece.
Uh,
So you recently got your pilot's license, and I know that was like a goal of yours. So
yeah, it's fun. Aviation is something I've always done. In my high school era, I had won NASA's moon base championship, where they actually wanted us to envision what going back to the moon's going to look like over a decade ago. And that always kept me intrigued with aviation. And
mhm.
as much as I, wanted to go that route, and I had taken a different direction, I thought 2023 was me coming back, to aviation and flying around.
Yeah.
Um, it's fun, just like people say, cooking is a way to kind of get away a little bit, or gardening is, or people have different hobbies, and so my hobby is kind of flying around, with this beautiful sky.
Yeah. See what I said? He's
It's
just
just
so humble. Just a humble guy. We all get on commercial planes. We don't have a jet or a plane that we can that we can go get in, Sammy. But thank you.
hey,
Give us
we,
to
we,
aspire.
we can drag you and turn you into a pilot as well.
Oh, Sammy. I don't no thank you. No thank you. And something else that I absolutely love. So Sammy, you're also an author. So you're like extremely accomplished. But one thing I can honestly say, and I think Felix just said it best, as you move up, it's important to learn to control your ego. I don't, as many times I've been around him, I haven't seen it. I'm pretty sure I don't know if you have one. I'm pretty sure you might have some or something that kind of makes you rah rah, but I've never seen it, so I can't speak to it. But I can honestly say, like, he is genuinely one of my favorite people because he has
I
accomplished so
appreciate that.
much. Yeah, he has accomplished so much, but yet this is really how he is. Like, he's really this chill, like this mellow. I'm pretty sure there might be other times where he gets kind of rowdy, but I hadn't seen that. But I can speak to this character of him and that it's very consistent. And in the rooms that I've been in with him, he's always consistent. So as you being in all these great accolades, all these great titles, let's before our time comes to an end, let's talk about the author Sammy.
The author Sammy, I had collaborated on a book with a group of fellow, marketers from around Houston. But I'm in the process of actually having my solo book come out mid of this year, and that one's going to actually focus on what we've been talking briefly about today, is branding and marketing.
Okay.
How do you kind of take that personal brand and take it to the next level? I think the one way I've learned to increase your knowledge is to share knowledge.
Yep.
And the more I kind of share this knowledge with others, my way is to give back. So one of the purpose of me having a book is to uh, sell that book. I'm going to be printing those at cost, sell those, and raise some money for different charities that I've been working with. Uh, I do a lot of stuff when it comes to domestic abuse for women, and there's various charities I work with. So I'm going to dedicate the book, for that cause, and that's my focus. Help people educate themselves about brands and building their brands, but at the same time, do some good with it.
I love it.
Uh, but you're right. When it comes to uh, being arrogant, I don't have time for that. I'm busy beating myself up.
Yeah.
So and making myself better day by day. But that's what it is. I think I've finally come to realize that uh, it's hard to kind of break free from that culture and society norm that
Mhm.
you're kind of tied into. I had read somewhere, and I can't think of who had said it, but they say that you're basically imprisoned yourself in your own brain, and
Mm,
your brain is the biggest prison out there for you, and it's how do you kind of break from it? How do you mentally free yourself from it, and then the path just opens up.
right.
And I feel like a lot of people, especially with entrepreneurs and mental health issues out there right now, we're our own worst enemy.
Yes.
And I don't need somebody else to, come knock my lights out. I'm not going to go knock somebody else's lights out. It's just I'm doing it to myself. And
Yes.
when we have that realization, you start taking that step. And what Felix had said earlier is kind of in the comments is having your own path, having your own journey, and then looking back and looking at that journey
Yeah.
and how you got there.
I
Yeah,
think that's how you stay humble, to be honest
yeah,
with you. Remember where you came from. Don't ever
yeah,
forget that piece. And I
yeah,
feel like sometimes we miss that, right? Like you get, even I have to remind myself, and I'm grateful that I have my almost 17-year-old here to remind me because kids definitely keep you humble. They're your great,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
they definitely keep you humble. So she definitely keeps you in that space of just remembering, okay, remember where you came from. Don't ever get too high
yeah.
so that you forget where you came from.
Yeah, and I think that's what happens when nowadays when you get money.
Yeah.
We're talking about new money, old money a lot recently in different communities and different cultures and different settings. But uh, the quote out there was that money just shows who you always were. It's not who you've become, and so don't forget that.
Yeah.
Don't let that money bring the worst out in you, and if we can just kind of live with that mission of helping others and bringing that change, that can go a big way. Giving back is a way of networking. You again, you don't know who you're volunteering with, who you're connecting with.
Yep.
Networking events is again a great way for you to connect with people. But in order to do all that, you have a big thing on top of you, which is branding.
Yep.
Who you are, who you need to become. Um, and that branding is the way of showcasing your journey. I get the question. I think Allison, you've asked me, what do you do? Nobody knows what I do because I've been so busy in my own story and my own journey that I haven't had a time to just sit and define, what I do all day and explain, to people. It keeps people curious on what Sammy does all day, but it's just I have a goal, I have a path, and I know that I need to get to it because I don't think anybody's coming in and handing me a trust fund, to do it.
No, you're not
Um,
independently wealthy. You're independently wealthy. We're working on that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's so funny, but that's so true. So, Sammy, as we come to an end, um, oh, I like this one. Hold on. As I like this. Janet, this is great. Money is only a tool to be used to provide opportunities for others. I love that. I know Sammy does too, because our heart beats for the community. So
Yeah.
that is so important. But I want to piggyback on two things that you said. I want you to kind of run down maybe two things that you feel like when you're developing your personal brand, what are two qualities that you should try to be consistent in?
Uh, a consistency.
Okay.
Show up every single day when you're building that personal brand. You can't show up one day and then not show up, for another few weeks, which
Right.
happens commonly.
Yeah.
And I always say consistency. Just to define it is as simple as, hey, if I'm going to do what you did here, Allison, you're doing a podcast, you're doing it every single time.
Yep.
You're not like, let me take a 6 months break and come back. It's no matter how less you do, not advocating for you doing less, but do it over and over and over again. If you're going to do one post a week, then post every single week. If you're going to post daily, then post daily. You're not going to see results for 3 months, 6 months, 8 months sometime. So the consistency is a key in building that personal brand. And
Mhm.
then B, You know, don't get stuck on perfection.
Mm.
That's another thing that damages you building a personal brand. People are gonna want you more when you're vulnerable and real than they're gonna want you if you're just putting a perfect product out every single time. Uh, I'm sure down the road, uh, I'm gonna try to get on Allison's podcast. I'm gonna have to go through her accounts manager, her assistant, and I'm gonna have to go through going to a studio, having my makeup and hair done. And but there's time for everything, right? I mean,
Yes, there's a season.
you're you're building that season up one step at a time. The the best thing uh, that I would say to also build a personal brand is to learn from others. And you know, being on a podcast is one of the best ways to kind of educate yourself. Reading is another best way to kind of educate yourself. But two big things again: consistency and don't get stuck in perfection.
Amen. Amen. And then something that I think that I want to, so I just want to piggyback off some of the things you said. Um, don't get stuck. And then something that I always say, and I remind myself of this: despise not the day of small beginnings. Like this is just me in my home interviewing people, but who knows? You know what I'm saying? I have big plans for They Say, but it's perfecting my craft at the level I'm at right now, and then just continuing to perfect it. And don't beat yourself up if you're not where you think you should be, because timing is everything. And before those bright lights get on you and you hit those stages, you want to make sure your character can sustain where you're going, and you have the integrity also, and the reputation. You want to get I would say refined behind the scenes instead of being refined on the stage.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 110%. But you're talking about having a home setup. Look at the peak of COVID. Every single major news reporter had a home setup. I don't know if you saw that these news reporters were actually competing for the best home setup on Zoom because they were all having to do Zoom for their news stories and stuff. But yeah, yeah. I mean, again, you never know until you get started. And until you get started, you're kind of never going to get there. So uh, just a short summary of some of the things we've kind of talked about. This piece of personal branding is kind of become essential,
Yeah.
from all the way from your high school, because now the colleges are looking at it. In college, the new employer is prospectively looking at it. As an entrepreneur, your customers looking at that image. um, every single person is looking you up online. It no longer happens where you just kind of walk in,
Mhm.
uh, and people are going to not know anything about you. Talk about AI. AI is looking you up when you file those, job applications and stuff, and kind of gauging you based on how you might have previously acted,
Yeah.
uh, on social media. So image is everything. Branding is a key arching thing, and uh, consistency to do that, and networking is that next step, that kind of takes your brand to the next level.
He, I could have said it better myself. Now, before we close, because we're coming to an end, I wanted to congratulate you on your new role as president of Open, and I wanted you to kind of
Oh,
share
thank
with
you.
us about Open, because it's an organization that's near and dear to my heart, and another place where I got to see Sammy's greatness. So, tell us a little bit about Open, Sammy.
Yeah, we had a phenomenal president, Tina, who just closed her chapter, and to thank Tina, because she came in a very, very tough time,
Yeah,
which was during the a peak of COVID, and then revitalizing the organization back up,
yeah,
post COVID. So she really made that stepping stone for me to come in and step in, and take it to the next level. And so I'm really hoping, I'm excited. Open has provided me with some of the finest mentors
yes,
that you can only dream of having,
yes,
in the world. And that's one thing I say, that that organization is one of the easiest access to, success stories that you can have in this world.
yeah. You can sit next to a
And
billionaire at Open.
yeah,
Yeah,
you can sit next to a billionaire. You can sit next to somebody who's, sold 10, 15, 20 companies, who might have done, acquired hundreds of $1 million of, mergers and acquisitions. It's a rare group. Now, if you compare somebody like something like Open Houston as an organization to somebody else, even around in state of Texas, you're not going to find an organization that's not pay to play.
Yes.
Open is one of the few organizations that's really built on giving back uh, and mentoring others. And I love the fact that even today, 13 years into my career, there's guys who've been there for 45 years
Mhm.
into their careers, and I can always pick up a phone, make a call, and next thing you know, you have somebody who's a sound guide and a sound advisor to you. And I know, Allison, you've met some, great folks. Our chairwoman Samina is phenomenal.
Man,
Uh,
Samina's the best.
yeah,
She's the
yeah, Samina's great. Kamal, yeah, Faisal, Manish, all these guys
yes.
are,
Some amazing women.
Zahid Salim, all these guys are just phenomenal. You got Faiza, who's been doing a lot,
Yes.
and she's a storm to kind of mess with, and she does a great job. So we've had a great leadership team over the past year. So I'm excited about it.
I'm excited for you too, and I'm excited for what you got going on in the future. And Sammy, I just want to first just thank you again. This hour went by so fast; it always does. I told you it's just like a conversation. Half the notes I went over with you and all that stuff, we never end up talking about it. But I wanted to make sure we really got a gist of the wealth of knowledge that you are. And one thing, like I say this, I absolutely love and adore and appreciate about you is you're not afraid to give information. Like you will just freely give information. And I believe this is why you have been successful because you don't hold back. And I've been at my wits end and I can call Sammy and be like, okay, Allison, like AMI has been alive for like 2 days, calm down. And I'm like, no, it's not moving fast enough. It's not doing what I wanted to do. And then he also holds me accountable. He's like, how's your networking? Are you doing at least 5 to 10 networking events? I'm like, Sammy, a lot of people know me already. He's like, that doesn't matter. You still need to go and make sure other circles know you. So just having those people that come before you that are willing to share information, those are the true gems. And that's why you are successful. And that's why you will continue to be a success and such a just a pillar in our community and to so many people. So I thank you for taking this hour with me. You, like I always say, you could have been anywhere and done anything with your time. So I just appreciate you for saying yes.
No, thank you for having me. I think what you're doing is amazing. You're bringing meeting of the minds and all these phenomenal people on this show. And I've learned so much from your previous interviews, and I hope to keep doing that with the future interviews that you have.
Awesome. Well, next Wednesday, they say we'll be back with finally Chris. So I'm excited. I'm finally getting Chris on so we can really dig into personal branding and marketing at a high level and just his experience and walk. And I just thank you all for joining in with Sammy and I tonight. And we're just going to bid you a good night. And I'll see you next Wednesday. And Sammy, thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. Bye, guys.